Michael, hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Louise, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us today on Career Marketeer. Great to have you on board. Just as a quick intro to people who don't know who you are, but this is Michael Payne, who you've been working in marketing now for 10 years. The last 7 of those have been purely as an SEO specialist. In the last 2 or 3 years now, you've transitioned to become a full-time freelancer. And this podcast today is all about the career journey from working as an SEO and becoming a freelancer. So we're here to learn about your journey, the highs and lows of becoming a freelancer. So just for our listeners, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into marketing and the work you're doing now.
Yeah, so like you said, I started out in marketing when I was 25. There wasn't a particular reason I went into marketing. I just wanted to start working in an office and start doing a professional job. But I very quickly found an interest in digital side of things and slowly moved into SEO. Yeah, in terms of that time, I've worked in many different companies. I've worked my way up to quite senior roles, moved to be a consultant, and yeah, a little bit just for anyone out there who's looking for an SEO consultant. Here I am. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn or drop me a message. Always welcome. But yeah, it's going to be good to talk a little bit about my journey and how I've got to where I am, and any insights I can give to people who are possibly looking to do something similar.
Yeah, definitely. So, what was it that, to become a freelancer, you've obviously shaped a career out as being a go-to SEO specialist, but when was it that SEO became your main focus within marketing? And what was it about SEO in particular that drew you to become an all-round specialist in that space?
Fortune. I wasn't really aiming to specialise. I actually wanted to go down the route of being a generalist. I thought that was the way I wanted to go because my aspiration when I got into marketing was to be a head of marketing. But then just completely fortuitously, I ended up going into SEO specific roles and I just really got into it. I found an interest in it. I got really interested in the nuts and bolts of it. I had really good people teaching me along the way, really good mentors. And I got it. I understood it and I saw a path forwards with it. And once I got into that and I specialised in it, I didn't look back. It felt right. It felt natural for me to continue in that space. Whereas previously, I kind of jumped from job to job because I wasn't really too passionate about what I was doing. But as I moved into SEO, I understood it. I got it. I was interested in it, and it all just kind of aligned to the point where I just continued, and that was the path. That was the way I was going.
Brilliant, yeah. So going right back to the very beginning then, so your first breakthrough into marketing, what was your career path? Did you start in agency or in-house? Where did your journey take you?
Yeah, I started in-house and I worked with agencies and agency partners, and I really liked the vibe of an agency. I really liked just, how quickly they got on with things, how much they knew, and the way agencies worked. But I actually found the transition from in-house to agency quite difficult. A lot of agencies, for some reason, don't like to take people who have worked in-house. I think they see them as like they bottleneck and become very particular about a particular brand, whereas I wanted to do multiple accounts. I wanted to work in multiple industries. I didn't want to be shoehorned into one. But my first few roles were all in-house. It was only when you placed me at Data Metrics that I went agency side, and that's really where I guess my progress kind of rocketed upwards, because that was when all of a sudden, instead of just working on one website or one particular marketing for one company, all of a sudden I was introduced to like 10 different clients with different needs and different size sites and different technical setups, and it all became, the amount of information I got from that was so much more than I'd ever got before that.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to really own my craft and have different use cases, which really matters in the SEO industry. So that was when it really kind of came off the ground for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think from my experience, a lot of people who are hiring for an agency role can be hesitant about taking somebody from a purely internal background, just because I personally find, it's the pace is very different. The expectations are so much different. It is, it can be draining when you've got so many clients and everything's going wrong at once, and you've got to be the person they're all coming to solve their problem. And in that respect, I think, that agency isn't necessarily for everyone, but like you said, the opportunity that it presents is endless because you get exposure to so many problems and so many different tasks to handle.
I honestly feel like if you want to learn a specialism, going agency side is a far quicker way to do it than in-house. But that's just on my experience. There may be other people who find it the other way. There may be people who feel like if they can just focus on one thing and do it really well, then that is a better way. But for me, it was better to, I guess, be busy and have lots of different things going on at the same time, but not for everyone, certainly.
No, definitely. And I can relate to people I've spoken to over the years who, for them, agency is just not the thing. And I tend to find that a lot of people who are in a digital agency environment aspire to go internal. So you've obviously come from a different angle. You started your
I did
career.
it the other way.
Yeah, I did it the other way. But that, everyone's got their own unique journey. But what was it that really inspired you to take that leap from, working in, secure environments, shall we say, somewhere where you've got your pay slip, to go freelancing? What was it that really inspired you?
So there's a couple of things. One was my realization of just how much agencies were able to make per day for someone senior in the space. That really, I'm talking about 1,200 a day for my time through an agency. And I, as a consultant now, I don't charge anything like that because obviously I appreciate, an agency, that money is going to the whole agency and everything about the agency. But I just thought to myself, if I could charge half of that, but I get it all, they're going to get the same level of service, but I'm going to get much more of a chunk of it. Everyone kind of wins. They're paying less, but I'm getting more. For the situation I was in. So that was one part of it. And the other part of it is my partner, Olive, and I, we'd become a bit not happy with the stagnant life. We kind of wanted to be flexible and travel and live the life of what a freelancer can do. And COVID kind of opened our eyes to that because pre-COVID, we both worked. We just went to work, came home, kind of what most people did and what a lot of people do now. But after we had the ability to work from home, it just kind of became a bit more of a clear journey that maybe this could become something more permanent, and maybe it could actually be that it was my own clients as opposed to making lots of money for someone else. So those are probably the two key things. We both really wanted to travel as well, and with a job, even remote jobs, it just didn't feel like we could ever properly do that. So those were the two key things that really pushed it. Opportunity for getting paid more, everyone wants that, and being able to be flexible and live a bit of a different lifestyle. They were the two drivers, really.
Brilliant. And was it sort of like a planned transition, or was it spontaneous?
It was planned. We went on holiday to Greece, and the plan came forth. What had happened is a digital partner of mine who I'd worked with while I was at one of my previous jobs actually reached out to me and said, I need an SEO consultant. I can't find anyone and I really need someone. Would you consider taking on a bit of work on the side? And I thought, yeah, okay, why not? This was before we'd even thought about it. This was before this had even been an opportunity. So I thought, yeah, okay, I can do that. And, the work was relatively straightforward for someone who'd worked in agency world and was quite senior at this point. So I took on the work and it went very well. And then I got a second piece of work with this client, and then this partner introduced me to another client, and then they wanted more work, and then they became a retainer because they had lots of stuff they needed to do on the site. I still have them as a client now, so that's 3 years later. And then it just kind of started to snowball a little bit, and there was bits of project work coming in, and there was work coming in from here. We just kind of thought, okay, if I can make as much money from these little bits as I'm making in my job, what about if I went all in and actually really promoted myself as this and reached out to the network I've built and actually, took it a step further and focused on it? How could it actually go? So, we were on holiday. We decided we're going to transition to full-time freelance. We're going to get it that the amount of money coming in from freelance is more than the amount from the job I was doing. And at that point, can cut it off and then we can go and do whatever we wanted. So that was the plan, and it happened quite quickly.
Amazing.
As these things do. Towards the end of that year, I quit the job, and in the January we went travelling. We went travelling around Europe for 6 months while freelancing, and it was great.
Oh, Amazing. Yeah, that seems to be the dream that a lot of marketers have. They just want to have that freedom to do the work they love, but not be restricted to a geographical place or office. So yeah, sounds
Well, absolutely. And, in our world, digital, everything can be done digitally.
cool.
I appreciate when you're part of a team, you might need to train people, mentor people, have face-to-face meetings, but the actual work itself, you could do it from anywhere. We were in Montenegro for a couple of months, and I was just writing meta descriptions in a laundrette because we were traveling. And it's just, it's those sorts of things that it's like, yes, you can literally do it anywhere.
Absolutely.
So it really does fit with that lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just having that focus and discipline to make sure that you are delivering on what you've said you will do,
Yes.
as well as enjoying the perks of traveling.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of my key points when we come on to what I think, freelancers perhaps need to do to make sure they're successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you mentioned it was, it took a while. You started freelancing on the side of your full-time job, but then that's when you decided to put aside the day job and commit full-time to freelancing. So how long was it that you spent doing that as part of a side job?
So the first piece of work that came to me was in April, and then December was when the job was finished.
Right.
So it was 9 months.
Great. And
9 months of doing it on the side. And because I wasn't, fully in the freelancing, because I obviously had a full-time job, it came in peaks and troughs. So there was some months where there was none, and then there was some where there was quite a few bits. It just, it was volatile for a little bit. But then towards the back end of the year, it started to be more consistent, and it was picking up, and I was getting prospects coming through in my pipeline, and it really did feel like, okay, this is the time to do it.
Oh, brilliant. And how did you go about picking your first sort of clients and building that portfolio?
I didn't. I had this partner who introduced me to a few clients. Beyond that, I guess like a little bit of word of mouth spread. And then as I came towards the end of my time at the job, I started to reach out to people in my network who were potentially looking, or who I'd worked with before and had, given me good feedback or were happy with the work that I've done. I started to just kind of utilize the network I've built over the years to build my client list up, and the amount of money that was coming in. It went up very, very quickly in the new year. January through to June of the year when I was first solely doing it and we were traveling, it really did go up really, really quickly once I reached out to my network. And that is probably one of the things I would recommend to anyone who is wanting to possibly follow this process and become a digital freelancer, is make sure you are present and show up for the people in your network when they need the service you're going to offer. And then when the time comes, you've got a really good chance of them wanting to continue working with you, because the network is more than just people you've worked with. It's people who know you've done a good job. They know that you turned up. They know that you were always on time for meetings. They know that when you said you were going to do work, you did it. You know that if you met them face to face, you were polite and pleasant and professional. All of these things just really, really do turn up and build that long term, because at this point I've not had to build a website, I've not had to advertise myself. It's entirely built off of the network, which I'm very, very fortunate for, but also very happy for, because it means that I don't have to play the advertising game just yet. Maybe the time will come, but so far it hasn't.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely true, because if you're that person who's recommending somebody and that person lets your contact down, it looks bad on you, doesn't it? If you're saying, "Oh, I know Michael, he's a top SEO freelancer," and if for whatever reason you don't deliver, they're going to think, "Who on earth recommended that SEO consultant to us?" Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more weight carried with somebody giving that personal recommendation to a business. So but that's great that you, like you said, it's all been organic and you've had that successful growth. But I mean, now that you're full-time, the last few years, that last 2.5 years, it's been all out freelancing. Can you give an idea of what a typical week, or like you said, with the peaks and troughs, what a typical month might look like as a freelancer?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that's different to when you're in an agency is you have to do everything yourself. So, I'm a very senior SEO now, but I will have to do the dog's body work of, updating internal links or updating meta descriptions. I will have to do that, because I have to do everything equally. I have to organise all the meetings, I have to do all of the comms, I have to do all of the account management, all of the invoicing, everything that a business would do. You have to do like a mini version of it all just for yourself. So typically in terms of a week, I guess I know what work I've got coming up. I have it all mapped out. I have tasks planned out each month of everything that I'm going to do for the month, and then I will spread them out through the month as much as possible. I'll maybe say I've got 3 tasks on a Monday, 4 tasks on a Tuesday, just depending on what else is going on in my life and what the work is, how big the tasks are. But there's a lot of planning goes in to make sure that I deliver everything at the time that I've said I'm going to deliver. And that's one of the greatest pieces of feedback I get from the people I work with, is that as a freelancer, they know they can depend on me. If I say I'm going to do 4 things this month with their time, I will do the 4 things in this month with their time. And some of the people I've worked with, the feedback they've had for other freelancers and other agencies is that that's not often the case. They have to chase. The work comes incomplete because they've clearly not had time to finish it. Maybe the branding will be off, or there'll be placeholder slides and stuff. And it's just that, I guess, care and attention to detail to make sure that you do what you've said you will do, but also you'll do a good job of it, is something I know has helped me along this journey to being able to continue as a freelancer beyond my employed roles.
So planning is key, really. It's time management and
massively. It really, really makes a difference. I honestly don't think I could do it without all the planning and organisation that I do, to just make sure that I know exactly what I need to do and when. I know when I need to send invoices. I know when I need to send reports. I know when the data is going to be available for the reports that I send. I know what needs to go in the reports. There's so much goes into it, and it's a really, really important factor. And I guess it kind of competes a little bit with what most people see as like the digital freelancer or digital nomad, as it's coined so often. The lifestyle it's really, I guess, floopy, and you can kind of just pick stuff up whenever, and it's the two lifestyles kind of work together because you can just do the work whenever. And for some people, I'm sure that works, but for me, I need to know exactly what I need to do, and I need to plan it in. If we're going somewhere for a week and I need to work while we're going there, I will plan out what I'm doing when around the other stuff we're doing. And I guess that means that I can have more clients than if I perhaps wasn't as organised and it was a bit more, I just kind of put my laptop on and go, right, what am I doing? I feel like I wouldn't be able to house as many clients as I do. The organisation allows me to scale and use my time more efficiently.
Definitely, yeah. Do you think freelancing is for everyone? Have you come across situations where you've thought that you should not be in freelancing?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly come across freelancers and agencies who aren't delivering what they say they deliver. And, I've had it multiple times where I've said to, I'm working with another freelancer for a company, and I'll say, okay, I'll get everything done by the end of this week, and then don't hear anything. I'm waiting because my next action is based on what they've done. So then on Monday, I'll say, okay, can you let me know how you're getting on? Don't hear anything until Thursday. They then send an email saying, oh, I'll get it done. Great. Okay. Yeah. What am I supposed to do with that? What's the client supposed to do with that? So I think, I don't want to say it's not for everyone, but you have to have a level of discipline to be able to make sure you're keeping up with what you've said you would do.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know I said it earlier, but communication is so important. Like, sometimes tasks take longer. Sometimes something happens in your life that means you can't do something. Let the client know. Let the people you're working with know. Most people are very approachable and okay about these sorts of things. You don't need to hide that you've not been able to finish it. Just communicate. Just say, I had something happen last week. Unfortunately, I haven't done it. I'll be getting it done in the next couple of days. Or this task's taking me longer than I thought. It's bigger than I thought. I'm going to need another week. It's all good. And that feedback loop really builds trust with the client as well. And it's authenticity as well, because, if you don't deliver something, you've got communication to say what's happening. Really, really does matter.
Yeah, the worst thing would be to have a client chasing you saying, well, why isn't this done yet? Oh, yeah, because I had this on last week. I said, well, why didn't you come to me and tell me this first? You don't want to leave people guessing, what's going on.
Yeah, be proactive, not reactive. If just, your client, to an extent, they don't deserve to know your whole personal life, of course, what's happening. But if you're not delivering something that you said you would, they're paying you. They deserve to know why that's the case.
Yeah.
And, you know, over time for me, a lot of the clients I work with are long term now and they trust me. It feels like I probably don't need to tell them that something's going to, you know, maybe take a couple of days extra, but I still do because I feel like it's, you know, they're paying me, they deserve to know what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about the kind of general sort of lifestyle of freelancing, what other challenges are there? What are the biggest challenges? I'm thinking more of the sense of, you know, how you manage. Do you ever have issues like with clients, you know, paying invoices late or, like you say, miscommunicating? What other big challenges do you have as a freelancer?
Invoices being paid late is definitely a frustration. I think I've been quite lucky that I'd say 80 to 90% of clients I've worked with are largely paid on time. You know, there might be one that's a couple of days late occasionally or one that slips through, but as soon as you let them know, they're like, oh yeah, let's sort that. But there are some where they don't pay on time and you reach out and they don't come back to you. And then, you know, 2 weeks goes by and you still, it's not necessarily, you know, from my perspective, it's not necessarily that they haven't paid me because yeah, I'd like to think in 99.9% of the time they would pay me. It's the fact they haven't told me.
Yeah.
You know, they haven't come to me and gone, really sorry, payments have been delayed this month. It's going to be a couple of weeks. Because then I'm like, okay, great, no worries. I know now, you know. So that's one of them. I think one of the things that I've certainly found is that a lot of people are the people from my network, great, you know, they're people I've worked with, or if they get recommended to me by someone, you know, they've got a spoken, what's the term for it? They've had a testimonial from someone say, oh, you should work with this guy because he's good. But when it's people who perhaps have just reached out to me on LinkedIn or, you know, they happen to have just come across my profile, I think sometimes they want to get information out of a freelancer, but they have no intention of working with them. And that's something I've found as difficult is how much information to give away on a prospect call, because you don't want to give them too much, but you equally need to be able to prove you can do what they're asking for. And I'd say my success rate for people in my network is probably like 90% in terms of that. You know, 90% of the time it'll be, we'll talk and then it'll come in. But for prospects who are people I don't know, it's probably like 50, maybe even less, because a lot of the time there's a lot of time wasters. And that's another thing, time wasters. And I know that it happens in every industry, but as a freelancer, every minute you work is technically a minute you're, you know, when you go into a job, every minute you work, you're getting paid for. But as a freelancer, every minute you work, if you're spending it on time wasters or people who have no intention of actually working with you, they just wanted information or chasing invoices, you know, all this stuff, it all adds up. It's all time that you're not getting paid for. So that's probably one of the things as well is making sure that you keep on top of what's worth spending your time and what isn't. That's probably a challenge as well.
Yeah, is that something that you learn from experience, or do you have sort of metrics that you try and measure a potential client? You know, look, I can go into further detail with this, Mr. Client, but this is, you know, we're at a point now where I should be charging you. How do you get to that cut-off point? How do you measure that?
I don't really have a metric. I guess I just take it on face value. If I'm having a conversation with someone and they've said, this is what we want, and I've then said, okay, this is what I can do. If they then start asking questions around what it's going to get for them, and I guess they start then asking questions about, okay, so, you know, thank you, you do an audit for this price. Do we need to look at our international SEO? Is there problems with our international SEO on the site already? Yeah, you know, it's kind of, they're already asking for the information before we've done the work.
Yeah, definitely.
I've never had to say, I've never gone as far in a conversation as saying you're going to have to pay me for me to continue talking to you. But I have said that would be included in the audit. And sometimes, you know, that has meant I don't get it because I'm not demonstrating that I can do it. What I do sometimes, though, is if I've got, you know, someone who's reached out and it's a big prospect and they say, okay, we're looking for someone to devise an SEO strategy and tell us where we need to focus, I might just have like a very quick look at the site beforehand and just come with one thing. But it's something that I've defined I'm going to do, not something that they're trying to pull from me on the call.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something that I do as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, so it's a case of taking the precautions in place when you're engaging with those clients, not to just bow to everything they ask for, but just trying to balance it. Yeah.
Very important that. I think it's something that's very much in the agency world. A lot of clients, once you're in an agreement with them, they'll keep wanting more and more and more, even though you've only got an amount of time. And for freelancers, some clients do that too. You'll say very clearly, you've got 3 days a month, that's what we've agreed, but they'll be asking questions constantly, sending emails at all hours of the day. They'll want more and more and more, and you do have to kind of say, if we want more, we're going to have to increase the scale of it.
Yeah.
But that does still happen as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, with that in mind, do you ever have issues where a client or potential client might be saying, well, we're speaking to some other freelancers, they were happy to disclose this? Do you ever have that kind of feeling that a potential client's trying to pin you up against somebody else, and like you said, well, they're happy to give this information? And how do you manage that if you're being told outright, we're considering you and other freelancers?
Yeah, I mean, I've had that multiple times where they'll say they'll be talking to other people. I guess from my perspective, I have a very solid foundation of clients that I have, and I have long term. I know that might not always be the case, but right now I do, and I have been very fortunate to have that for the last 2 years, pretty much. Different clients, but a solid base. If they're trying to, I guess, make me feel like I need to give them more information by confirming there's other people involved, I know that I can give them a bit, but not a lot. But I won't give them too much because it might be a time waster. One thing I'm very fortunate to be able to fall back on is, over my years of working in SEO, I've managed to accrue a large number of LinkedIn testimonials. I mean, they are the sort of thing where if you don't ask for them, no one gives them. So
That's
over
true.
the years of working with people, I have asked the people I've worked with, I've said, no pressure, but as I'm someone you've worked with and you've given me a positive sentiment, would you be happy to give me a LinkedIn testimonial? And a lot of people don't respond, even though we talk, or a lot of people do it. So they are from real people. They are from people I've worked with. They're very relevant. So that's something I can always fall back on, because it's social proof that I know what I'm doing. So if this particular individual is really just trying to make sure I'm the right person for them, that's a bit of weight, I guess, to back up. And, I've got in my deck, I've got, case studies, I've got metrics to show that I know what I'm doing. I can comfortably talk about any topic in SEO because I've worked across pretty much everything now. So I'd like to think my experience and history would be enough to get things over the line where it's a genuine opportunity, not just someone who's trying to canvas information from specialists.
Yeah, is that something you compile, like a deck of your previous case studies and successes that you can demonstrate? Yeah,
and I don't always need to use it. Sometimes the people I talk to are so looking forward to getting an SEO person on board because they really think they need it, that I get on the call, I explain what I do. Maybe they've been recommended to me and they're just like, yeah, let's do it. But other times, people ask for a bit more information, credentials. They want to know, what I would look to do and relevant case studies to their industry. So I've compiled that over time. And at the start, when I first started freelancing, I didn't have too much of that. I just had a few slides that introduced myself, but over time, the amount of collateral I have about me and the stuff I do has grown and grown and grown to the point where I would say it's not far off what a small agency would have for advertising, because you need to have the right collateral for the opportunity that's in front of you. So over time, I've developed that.
Yeah, I think I might have to do something like that for myself as well, really. It's, like you say, think about all those success stories. And going back to something you were mentioning about, those LinkedIn recommendations, there might be somebody listening who is working agency now, has got a good relationship with a client who may be considering taking that step into freelancing. And, maybe a message is start collecting those LinkedIn recommendations now, have that weight to support who you are as a standalone freelancer.
Yeah. Absolutely, because there's very few ways for somebody who doesn't know your industry, there's very few ways for them to be able to determine the difference between me and someone who is perhaps a bit of a chancer, who doesn't know as much, but states that they do online.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things in the SEO industry is there's a lot of chances. There's a lot of people out there who say they know it and they do not. And I'm sure it's the same for many other industries, but that is one of the things that really shows that I have really worked with these people. I have really worked with these big brands, and they have recommended me. It's almost like a certification of my authenticity as someone who actually knows what he's doing. Because, in my industry, it's quite humorous quality of SEO work I see for people who have worked with another consultant or agency and have then come across to me. Sometimes the standard is very, very low. Not always. Sometimes it's great. I've got a client at the minute, and the SEOs who were there before did a tremendous job. It was just they were really expensive as an agency. But they did a really, really good job, and I'm now carrying on the work that they've done. But sometimes it's really, really not good. So trying to tell, clients come to me and they're basically like, we've got an SEO on board, but we don't see much progress. I don't want to just go in there and badmouth them. I don't want to be in there and be like, that strategy is rubbish or any of that. So what I do instead is I say, okay, I can have a look at what they've done, take the good parts, remove the stuff I wouldn't do. And you have this testimonial view of all the people who've recommended me from the past to show you I'll actually know what I'm doing and take you to the next level.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you say, just having that integrity, not to just be honest and say what is good and what can we carry on with and take forward. But it's great. So sort of going back to more of like from a personal perspective, obviously you've developed a great reputation in the market as a go-to SEO consultant. You've had to everything's come from word of mouth, but how do you manage that with your own personal life, being your own boss and that sort of work-life balance? How do you cope with that from a personal perspective?
I guess that there've been times where I found it difficult to balance everything. I'm very fortunate that my partner Olive helps me with some of the admin that goes with the freelancing that I do. So if there's ever a time where work gets a bit on top of me or I have loads of stuff coming at the same time, she really helps. She's really supportive in it, which is really, really helpful. That's a really good thing to have as a freelancer, a supportive partner.
Yeah.
Really, really helps. But it's one of the things I really try to do is I just try to block things together. So if I've got calls, for example, this week, all of my calls for this week, including this, are on the same day. They're all on the same day. So that's my call day. If I need to do, a few tasks on a particular day, I'll block out a 4-hour slot and I'll go into deep focus to basically really try and get through things as quickly and well as possible instead of spreading it out. Something I really struggle with is notifications. They really bother me. If my email pops up that I have an email, I'm checking it.
Yeah.
It's good in one sense because it means I'm always on top of communications and what's happening, and I can reply to things more quickly. But if I'm trying to focus on things, it's just going to take your focus away, and I'm not going to get through the work as quickly as possible. So if I go into focus, I tend to turn everything off other than the work that I'm doing, just to really do it, because then you can prioritize your time better. It makes a good difference. I remember when I worked in offices, I'd be in there for 8 hours, and I'd probably do like 2 hours of work, 2.5 in total, because there'd be, meetings, talking to people, distractions. Whereas now I can basically set myself, say, okay, this morning from 8 to 11, I'm going to do 3 hours of solid work. And then that might be it for the day. That might be the end of the work because I've gone into the zone. I've had a few coffees and I've zoned in and I've got through it quickly. So with her support and also being able to do that, it just means that there isn't really a difficulty in making sure everything in my personal life is okay at the same time as work. So it's just prioritizing your time, I'd say.
Yeah, and just managing that time, like you say, it's being your own sort of boss is, has added factors to it that you've got to do all the admin, like say, if you've got that support, but then and it is difficult if a client comes in and says, I have an urgent inquiry, can you get on a call now? And if you're saying, actually, no, my headspace is doing work for another client, I've got an hour's free on my call day, and you feel like that really helps you just sort of maintain that focus.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes clients come with urgent requests that are urgent. A lot of the time they come with urgent requests that are not urgent.
No.
So again, it's about determining from what they've sent to you whether or not it is something you should jump on. And when I turn my emails off, it's only for like a couple of hours. It's never a whole week or a whole day.
No.
It's just for a couple of hours. I'll always catch up on them. I have I have a need within me to make sure that I always have responded to emails and messages and anything on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things I've always done. I like to, when I come away from my desk, know that my inbox is cleared and responded to and everything is done, because then I'm finished for the day.
Yeah. Definitely.
So if there was ever anything urgent, I would still be available, just maybe not immediately.
Of course.
But clients don't expect that from a freelancer.
No.
They know that you'll be quite flexible with when you work. You might do 4 hours on a Sunday and then send the emails on the Monday. That sort of stuff. They know that. I let them know that. I won't be doing 9 to 5 Monday to Friday.
Sure.
My hours are a bit erratic, and I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah, so that's something else to be prepared for. Don't think of this as a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of setup. It's about delivering when you say you can, and that might include evenings, weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just be prepared for that.
It's a good thing, because you can be flexible when you do the work.
Mm-hmm.
There will be some things you can't avoid, calls.
Sure.
You have, for a successful client relationship, I feel like you do have to have calls, and there'll be times where you need to do something at a specific time. But for the large part, you can be flexible with when you do stuff, and it is a blessing, because you, like I said, let's say tomorrow I wanted to go for a hike in the morning.
Yeah.
I could go for a hike in the morning and then do my work in the afternoon. It's fine. So it's just being organised enough to do that. It definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And what other misconceptions do you think there are about freelancing? Like say one of them that could be wary of the kind of time management and the kind of client management, all these things. But are there any other sort of misconceptions you think that there are floating around about the freelance life that you think should be highlighted?
I think there's probably two. One is that it's really easy to get into. So I know that there might be people out there who they want to live that lifestyle. They want to do it as soon as possible. And I'm sure for some people that works, but I can't imagine me being able to do it without the knowledge and experience and network that I've built over the years, for me to be able to do it sustained for a long time. Because I know people want to live the lifestyle, they want to be able to have that flexibility, but you also need to have some security in that you have enough money coming in to be able to fund it. So I think one of the misconceptions is that you can just start doing it. Again, I'm sure some people out there do manage to do it, but I think for the large part, you need to get a bit of time behind you to make sure you know what you're doing, because then when you do it, you'll be sustained. You can keep doing it for as long as you need. And then, I think the second is, I guess we've kind of already talked about it, but it's people thinking that freelancers, you can just kind of do a tiny bit of work and get paid. I think there's a conception that it's a bit of an easy way, and you can basically, you can pick up a client, maybe it's a little shop somewhere, and you happen to know someone there, and you do a bit of work for them, and you can do a couple of hours, and you'll get a few £100 and off you go. And that's not sustainable. It's not something you can do long term. For me, the only reason it has worked, and I can't stress this enough to people wanting to do it, is the network built and the time. Showing and turning up and showing myself as an SEO consultant means that I can do this with a very healthy bank balance, and also being able to go and do certain things with the flexibility to do it. It's so important, but it is not easy. I can't imagine how it would have gone for me if I hadn't done the steps and the time before.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a very different conversation we were having.
Yeah, of course. And with that, do you find that you have to make time to attend events and put yourself out at kind of things like that to keep on top of the market insights and industry tell?
I probably should. I don't. I don't attend many events at all. I keep on top of it by every month I've got a session in my calendar to make sure I'm up to date with everything that's happened.
Yeah.
Read the big articles, addressed what they do, and I always pass that across to clients as well, so that they know what's coming. Because there has been a lot of change in my industry with AI and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's important to stay on top of it. And that's another thing you need to make sure you do as a freelancer, is you're not going to get your manager come to you and explain, there's all these changes to SEO you need to think about. You've got to find them and figure them out for yourself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So looking back, had quite a reflective session about your early career and so on. But if we could go back to, that marketer 10 years ago, or, even when you transitioned to be SEO, what advice would you give to sort of like your younger self about, starting off as a freelancer, and how could this be carried to one of our listeners, for example, who is thinking about going into a freelance career? What advice would you give to that marketer from 10 years ago?
I would say learn as much as you can, as early as you can, whatever that entails, whether it's that you go agency, so you're across multiple industries, whether it's that you do courses or whatever your specialism is. Learn as much as you can, because once you have the knowledge, it's a really good foundation for you to start being able to apply it. I know people may not want to wait, but I would spend a bit of time building a network of people who know you've done a good job, because then when you take the plunge, you have something to fall back on. You're not just out there on your own, because you have this network of people. They would probably be the two things. And just, we talked about it, but just be organised. Just, be organised, turn up, be present, be professional, be authentic, whatever it is that you want yourself to be represented as. Do that, and just make sure that you're moving forwards. And don't be afraid, if you're working a job, to take clients on the side. It's hard. You are doing two things,
Sure.
but it can help you to build that side of it as well.
I think there are so many great takeaways that we have here. So yeah, I think that's been great insight for anyone considering a freelance career, the highs and lows, but essentially anyone looking for a freelancer, reach out to Michael. Like he said, there's a lot of people out there who think they're freelancers and think they know what they're doing. You've built yourself as a credible SEO freelancer, and I think your future career and growth is going to prosper, and it sounds like you've roadmapped a really great career as an SEO specialist. So it's been great to hear about your personal journey.
Thank you, Louise. It's been really good to talk about it. And if any aspiring freelancers out there want to reach out as well to ask questions or talk about more about the journey, that's
brilliant. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Bye.